Welcome again to Riding in a Car with Pastor Bob. Good to have you with me today. So we're going to take a little time today to talk about the history of Sanctuary. You know, I get so many requests from people just wanting to know how all of this started, and I don't think I've ever really taken the time, at least in a podcast, to sit down and to just talk about how all of this started. So let's do that today. You know, I've been involved with Christian rock and roll for a very long time. When I was 15 years old, in the mid-60s, it's a long time ago, the Lord gave me a vision for Christian rock. And some things were just starting at the time. I was on the tractor one day, and some of you have heard this story, but I was driving the tractor on our family farm, and I heard this song on the radio by the Doobie Brothers called Jesus Is Just All Right With Me. And I believe that was the song. And I just remembered that it had Christian lyrics, and it wasn't by a Christian band, but it was a song about Jesus, and it blew my mind. And I loved rock music, but I was really conflicted because a lot of the rock music that I listened to wasn't exactly Christian, and I never thought of, that I could have Christian rock and roll music. So that was a pretty big deal to me. And I decided at 15 years old, I already knew that I was going to be a pastor, but I decided to dedicate my life to helping to pioneer Christian rock and roll. And that is what I've done all of these years now. And it's been, almost 50 years. 50 years, wow. That's a long time. Since that time sitting on the tractor. And, I got involved with Christian rock at the very beginning. Involved in all the Jesus People movement, the hippies, all of that. I was one of those. And, I've really enjoyed my quest for music. But I decided a long time ago and made a promise to God that I would stay on the edge wherever the edge was. So that took me to a lot of different places. I've been I was involved with Maranatha Music when it was just starting, and some of the early Calvary Chapel bands, and I set up quite a few tours and stuff with quite a few of the early bands that came out. And then, I was at Resurrection Band's music debut, their first album release party. So many monumental things through the years. I worked with new wave music when it first came out, early punk and all of that. I paid for the first band promotional pictures for Undercover, for the Lifesavers, for some of those early bands, and tried to help them get started. There's just so many stories I could tell about all of that. But let's fast forward a little bit to Sanctuary. So I was an interim pastor at a church in Whittier, California, and kind of helping out there, and they were going through some problems, and they asked if I would stay on for a little while. And I was an evangelist during that time, basically promoting Christian rock music, traveling around and doing a talk on music. And I heard about this group named Rock's Regime that was Christian guys, and they were doing heavy metal. And one day, a guy named Steve walked into the church, and I thought he was Oz Fox because he looked just like him. And I had just briefly seen these guys, and of course not too many people looked like them at the time, so they were easy to spot. And I talked to Steve for a while, and he was actually worked with Striper, and he was a good friend of the band and a guy that kind of traveled with them on the road, and was instrumental, I guess, in some of the early days and the name switch and all of that. But Steve came in, and Sharon, another friend, joined him, and she had been working with the band. She designed their red and black costumes, and we sat and we talked the whole day after the church service. And the only reason we had to stop is because I had to preach the evening service. And we decided to start a group, and we started Sanctuary. We named it that day as well. And the first thing we did was not a church service, but we started what we called Metal Missionaries. And we invited Christian metal bands to join us. Now, this was just starting. Everything was very fresh. And I never expected there to be very many Christian metal bands. And most of them didn't even know each other. There'd never been anything. And so we put that out, and we had 19 bands that came for the first meeting. Everybody from Barren Cross to Deliverance to Guardian to, 19 bands. Many of them went on for many years to do a lot of things. And pretty much everybody that was in the Southern California scene, where most of the bands were from at that point, was at the meeting. And we just had a great time. The church service started from there. Michael Sweet was the first worship leader, and Striper was just a little too busy then. Her career was really taking off for him to devote to it, but he was the first worship leader. And then Jim Laverty from Barren Cross joined us on worship a while later, and he's still the worship leader to this day. So that's kind of how we started, and things just kind of grew from there. We hit a nerve, and I had decided that if I ever was championing a movement again, that this time my focus would be discipleship. Because during the Jesus People movement, one of the things that really bothered me was that people weren't really very well grounded in the Word. And all anybody talked about during that time was the rapture. And that was, every Bible study had to do with the rapture, and people were excited about this, and it was kind of a new thing for everybody. And I watched most of those people that dropped into all of that, rapture Bible studies and the Jesus People movement. I watched most of them walk out of it again to the next big thing. And I realized that they were not grounded. They were hyped, but they didn't really establish a relationship with Jesus. So that's where I started, to begin that process of having a relationship with the Lord and teaching people how to get there. So one of the things we started right away with Sanctuary was what I called pastoral studies. Kind of a strange name for a group of metalheads, but we started pastoral studies and rad studies, and just wanted to get people into almost a Bible school thing, and we did. And I feel like so many people were grounded at that time and went on from there to do some amazing things. But we spent all of those years in Sanctuary with a lot of classes, a lot of teaching, a lot of discipleship, because we knew that, we were so controversial that it was okay to be controversial with the way that we dressed and the kind of music we listened to, but it was not okay to be controversial because we didn't know our doctrine, we didn't know who Jesus was, and we didn't know how to rightly divide the word of truth. So we've always been big on that. We've always been big on, making sure that people are grounded, making sure that they're established in the faith. So Sanctuary was born, and man, it just exploded. There was such a need for it. And as a result of that, we started an 800 line, and many of the bands put the 800 line number in their albums, and you may remember my picture in a lot of those albums, inviting people to call us, to get a hold of us, that we'd like to help them in their walk. And thousands of people called, in fact thousands every month, and thousands took through the mail rad studies and listened to our teaching tapes and all of those things throughout the years. But I'm very excited that we were able to pioneer a movement that was solidly based and still is. And now, so many years later, 31 years later, when we were in many countries, and I can't count how many people are involved with Sanctuary and the many ministries, it's so refreshing to know that God is still faithful, obviously, and that we're still going, and that we still reach thousands of people all the time. And what an awesome opportunity and platform. It hasn't been without struggle. We've learned a lot of things through all of this. We've learned to we've learned how to build a kingdom instead of an empire, and I have to say that I've learned a lot in that process. But we've learned how to reach out and how to be honest with people. And when everything exploded, there were just a lot of people. We had a staff of people that were only responsible for answering mail that came in, and every day the sack of mail was emptied, and we began the process. And you remember, this was before the internet, so these were letters that came in, letters that had to be answered and sent back, and then all the merchandise and all the things. So we had a staff that worked with the church and a staff that worked with the international ministry. And folks, it's just been great. It's not finished. I mean, we're still going, we're still doing it. But in those days, it was all very new, very fresh, and extremely controversial. So these days, things are a little better. I was called a lot of names in those days, and people were talking about how we were bringing false doctrine, and because of the music in. And so we knew that whenever we started something new, especially Vengeance and a few others, that we had to go the extra mile to make sure that it was scriptural, that it was almost a Bible study. If you remember the first Vengeance album, we even had Bible verses along with every lyric, and we just wanted to make sure that people understood that this was solid. They may not like the musical style, but it was solid. So we've done that, and people are more accepting now. But still, every time we start a new festival in a different country, most of the time I still meet with the local leaders and the ministers that are concerned that we're bringing satanic music, into their country. So, by the way, welcome to Nashville. We're downtown Nashville now as we're writing. There's a lot of building in Nashville. You see a lot of building because Nashville hasn't really not been hit so much by the recession. There are a lot of people moving here every single week, and a lot of new buildings going up all the time, and especially here in the downtown area. You can just see evidence of that everywhere. And we spend a lot of time here. We work with the homeless people, and we have a lot of homeless friends here downtown. Anyway, getting back to the Sanctuary story, I'm going to drive, by the way, to the bridge where we serve the homeless. Just want you to see it. We're not serving today, so the bridge will be empty, but I'd like to show you our location and where we're at. So we'll do that. But anyway, so Sanctuary grew and grew and grew, and is still growing. Sanctuary in California is still going on. Pastor Dave Perdue is at the helm. And Dave, if you remember, used to be the singer for a band called Neon Cross. Great guy. And several sanctuaries out there that are still going. Many that have, really taken hold, and others that haven't. But again, it's 30 years. I want you to notice the street signs that were coming up on here. If you turn right, you go to Gay Street. If you turn left, you go to Church Street. How about that? Only in Nashville, huh? Gay Street and Church Street. Here's the intersection. So, anyway, I moved to Tennessee in 1994 to begin the international ministries. And I got sick. And basically, it took me about 4 years to get back up on top of things. And 4 years later, we started the international ministries. Bobfest in Sweden started in 99. And from there, we had another location in Sweden, Norway, Switzerland, oh gosh, et cetera, 21 different festivals. All that grew basically out of Bobfest when we first started. So, the international ministry has been great. I've done a lot of traveling internationally, which has been great to really get to know the international crowd and to meet a lot of people and to call them family and friends. So Sanctuary today looks very different than it did. We're not opening churches anymore, which I'm very thankful for. We have a lot of cell groups, home groups, that kind of thing. There are some groups that meet at pubs to sit around and talk and share the scripture with other people who are sitting there. And in some cultures, that's the most familiar place to be. There are others who meet in a church-like building. Just a little bit of everything. And I like the diversity that we have. And so Sanctuary is very different than it was in the beginning. But it's still about heavy metal. It's still about the metal community. And these days, it's very international. In our podcast, by the way, we have 151 different countries that are watching. And that's amazing. It's amazing. So up ahead of me, you see a bridge. That's the Jefferson Street Bridge. And this is where we serve the homeless during the weekends. It's kind of hard to do it during the week in this location. We have other locations during the week. But you can see all these cars that are on my right. None of them are there during the weekend. So we're able to serve the homeless on Saturdays and Sundays and get away with it. But let me show you. See, here's the bridge. Here's where we have served the homeless for 11 years now. And I'll just take a little turn here and show you. I've pulled in this driveway thousands of times. Okay, here's the bridge. Now on Sundays and Saturdays when we're here, none of these vehicles are parked here. This is all open. And we take this whole area here and set up tables, round tables for people to eat at, and long tables for serving, and we have our music, and we have quite a deal. And in this part right here, this is where we park and store everything. And this is all very busy when we're feeding 100, 200 people. So there we go. Well, just wanted to show that to you. And I wanted to tell you a little bit about our history, and I appreciate once again you writing with me. And until next time, God bless you. Have a great day.